The Yak-15 was the Soviet Union's first operational jet fighter, heavily based on the Yak-3 design, modified to accept the German-made Jumo 004 jet engine. It's a beautiful aircraft, a beautiful piece of history, and an absolute must-have as an aero modeler, in my opinion. I redesigned the aircraft 3 times now, and I did this because I really wanted to capture the things that make the Yak-15 the Yak-15. Small details that I only noticed after printing my original prototypes and realizing that I wasn't happy with the forms. So the third prototype is really my masterpiece so far. There is certainly a lot to improve, but I'm happy with where I'm at the moment. The key differences between the Mark II and the Mark III design are purely aesthetic, really. The upper section of the fuselage, the forward fuselage in front of the canopy, is more boxy on the Mark III as compared to the Mark II, which is more circular. This has an inordinate effect on the appearance of the aircraft, and it really speaks Yak-15 when you see the Mark III as compared to the Mark II. One of those key details is the Jumo starter, which is at the front of the inlet of the aircraft, which, if applied to my own design, would have a detrimental impact on the EDF performance. So I needed to have a vent on the bottom of the fuselage to allow for more airflow to the EDF. This was a compromise, in my opinion. I really want to have the Jumo starter on my plane because it is one of those key details that shout Yak-15. You just have to have it. So I had to sacrifice performance or, clean engineering. One of the key issues with this aircraft was trying to keep the weight forward enough so that the CG could be in the right place. On the original aircraft, this was a major issue that I did not foresee. Keep in mind that my experience with designing and building aircraft is quite limited, and I certainly have a lot to learn. I printed a hollow version of the aircraft just to see whether there was some sort of issue with the airframe that I couldn't understand, but it seemed to fly okay. It had a moment of gliding. And that is essentially all that I have to go off of to ensure that this plane flies. On the third prototype, I really tried to have all of the electronics as far forward as possible, and this improved the issue somewhat, but it is still an issue, so I'm going to print a solid nose cone to counter the tail weight, because I've also added weight to the rear of the fuselage and the tail landing gear. Deciding to 3D print the landing gear was really an exercise in hopes and dreams, because if I can successfully print landing gear, then essentially all the key details of the aircraft are down to me and not up to whether or not a third party is stocking the items or not. The dream is to one day have a CNC mill and lathe and all these sorts of things to enable me to design metal parts. But until then, I'm hoping to have some success with 3D printing landing gear. I was able to capture some key details of the landing gear. They are non-structural, but they do add that much to the design and they make it so much more beautiful. I also was able to print the landing gear doors in PLA, but the problem with those is that they're kind of flexible, and I'm wondering if they're going to hold up to air resistance. We'll see, I suppose. I'm not too confident that these landing gears are where they need to be to really be effective in the long term, but I think that it is possible to achieve some sort of success with 3D printing landing gear, and I think that I'm on the right path. I will continue to try to experiment with 3D printed landing gear and try and get the weight down as well, because these are heavy. After a rather horrendous paint job, the aircraft is essentially ready for flying. Before I release these files, I want to add panel lines and other interesting details as well. I also want to make the aircraft disassemblable so that it is more convenient for transportation, and then I will release the files. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.